You both.
You too.
Welcome to beautiful Paramus, New Jersey.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, okay. Well, here's beautiful summery Chicago, by the way. We are really in a hot summer day for
It
once.
looks like the two of you have the same interior decorator.
I know, it's called like, you haven't seen the stacks of books on the floor. So.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel completely bereft.
It's
It's really hard keeping up with the Bernardes and the Prahalads.
we are the kind of people who move after they get the house filled with books. You have no more room, so you have to go to another place.
Yeah. Check that box.
Yeah. Well, I was commenting, Deepa, about the article, my impressions. I really like the article I told her.
Yeah.
It's really a very well thought review of practical applications and criteria with examples that readers can relate to and use as tools. So I think that would be a very interesting area to explore, because I think also this kind of topic could be an interesting topic for some kind of I would say session or activity that helps. There is a lot of literature about the whys, the what fors, and the big strategical picture, but not so much about how can you work in practical innovation. And usually what happens is the missing link is very little information about specific examples.
Yeah.
So, no? When I saw the spinner, I got a lot of ideas.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. With a lot of the growth in income, this paper was the first time I really had to explain design to the bottom of the pyramid, but what's actually happened since then is with the growth in income, there's actually so much that can be leveraged. I'll have to find out the way to get the PDF. I actually just wrote a lead article for the Journal of Quality and Participation. And I think a lot of the capabilities that MNCs bring, storytelling, branding, de-risking, actually dovetail very well. So you can almost take a lot of these SMEs and give them a booster shot with your existing capabilities. And so the picture has changed. Actually, the income levels described 20 years ago are very different. So I said, you've actually taken, I have this in an upcoming paper, so I'm just sharing with you a little early, but I said, we've taken a lot of people out of extreme poverty, but we've delivered them into purgatory. That's So, this is what's happened is that people are actually ready to consume, they're ready to move forward. But there isn't a lot between the absolute, experimental type of products and give you a taste of something and the durable. And they're finding even in places like India, the rural areas, all the MNCs, that's where they're getting the growth. There is a far greater demand for durable white goods and other things. Because what's happened is between actually finally some decent policy and economic growth, they're actually, that was why I was intrigued with your idea of using the household as the economic unit, because a lot of that $1 to $2 a day, but there's members of the family. And they have, subsidies on certain foods and all that. So their income is a lot of times 60, 70,000 rupees a month, between 40 and 70,000 rupees a month. So, $1,000 a month in a rural area is quite respectable.
Well,
So they're willing to pool for a lot of stuff, but there's not too much direct communication happening. And, I said, now what's happened is the cost of learning has gone way down because of telecommunication. So we can ask directly if you choose to. You don't have to guess at preferences that much. It's not so cost prohibitive for people to go in with a translator and try to figure all this stuff out and imagine. I'm like, no, you can actually take something directly to people, ask them, you can get a 3D printer, modify it pretty quickly, and use technology in just very different ways than we have in the past. And I see Habitat for Humanity, I think they did an experiment in one of the outside in India, and he said, look, you know what, we had our architects look at needs, but what we did this time is we built a model home. But what we did is we invited people from the community over the period of a month to say, what would you change? And they said, within that month, there were small, actually, it ended up being less expensive, but still so much more functional and actually aesthetically superior than what had originally been designed. So they said, okay, this has been a very interesting learning. So they said, we're going to see how we can do this, either with building scale, some smaller scale models or whatever, in a lot of other projects that we do. Because now we're like, everybody goes and works in a more well-to-do home, all that. So they know the habits, they know the preferences, the facility, and they know what they want, obviously. So they said, we're realizing that co-creating is becoming more possible at very early stages, and we need to figure out the right formula, but
it sounds like, I mean, what you're describing to me naively sounds like a variation of the crowdsourcing model. And using the wisdom of the community to progressively improve on what's in essence a rapid prototyping design or process.
And slowly, I think even more important, people are getting out of that mindset that, everyone else is a liability and a problem that we have to sit in air-conditioned rooms and solve, because, nobody's really waiting around to be saved. That's the biggest learning, right? Everyone is trying to make their lives better in whatever way possible. That's why I really liked, I took a look at some of the material you sent me, Mariano, of how they were improving buildings and individual stuff. And those are the kind of things that I think are really meaningful. And just by chance, I went to New York. So this group, so Robert Kaplan, who did this balanced scorecard stuff, is now trying to look at how you can balance analyzing financial performance and the social benefits. But they've had some interesting speakers. One of them was from Kaiser. As he said, in Oakland, they did this kind of work. They just basically went and they created what they call the Oakland 515. They went out on the street and found, okay, there are 515 people in this city who are homeless, who are over 50 years old. So the job training and everything else is going to be completely irrelevant at this point. So let's analyze each of these people on a case-by-case basis, see what they need, what benefits they're eligible for that they're not using. And I said in a year, they combined efforts with all the social service organizations, and they got 315 of them off the street in the first year. And then figured out what mental health, all physical health, all this other stuff was needed. And they're trying to expand that. So they said, we've never had as a healthcare company, we've never gotten involved in the housing problem before. But this is so deeply interrelated. Whatever care we give, the longevity of it is not even half of what it is for other patients because of the they're actually investing a lot of money in affordable housing. They're not building it themselves, but they're investing. Yeah. So I thought this is just more validation for exactly the kind of work that you're doing, and very interesting cases that they presented.
I'm thinking a lot about what you are saying, because I see like a lot of areas where it could be very interesting things. Number one, well, you just mentioned the housing, and what you can see in Barrio 31 is what we are basically, I started this year, we are in the 6 months age, a social lab. So what we have inside of a 50,000 informal settlement in the middle of Buenos Aires is a lab. the idea is that the neighbors are already developing a lot of spontaneous survival entrepreneurship tryouts. Plus, there are companies that are coming in with their own business model, trying to offer jobs. And for example, you have McDonald's, you have Santander Bank, and these are the three, Veolia, which is in waste management. And we are working in looking at the kind of intermediate ground between the pure survival entrepreneurship that, as you know, is by definition kind of conservative in terms of trying to repeating something that works somewhere else.
Yeah.
Usually, trying to make a living out of something they know how to do or they have seen how to do. And of course, the conventional jobs, a structured company that offers you a position, a job. In between, there are a lot of possibilities, and that could be an interesting, I was thinking, something like creating a activity that helps people to, when I was reading what you put there, and I couldn't help but remembering my first reaction to the 2004-2005 edition of your father's book, where there were all these, for example, I saw a bicycle powering a computer, which was sort of fun, but at the same time, eye-opening, thinking, wow, actually that's, no. So I thought all these examples per se make much easier for people to walk this distance between the things as they look now and some problems or aspirations, as you say in your article, I have. And perhaps I can just twitch something as simple as a salad spinner. And I was thinking, okay, if I combine the bicycle with a salad spinner, I may have a cleaner's store without power. Just what about combining a store where I have people doing exercise in fixed bikes and using that energy to power some of these appliances? And so we get rid of the fatties, and at the same time we transform sweat into equity, as opposed to the other. But all these kind of things that can be done. But what would happen if we just show people like 10 cases and ask them, okay, what do you think after looking at this? Maybe not in a, as you said, not putting people in a room, but putting people in touch with this and say, okay, we can create an online space. You can do this in the barrio, and we are going to work with you. If you bring an idea, maybe we can create some kind of first initial incentive, like, okay, try it. We have a place. That was one thing I thought.
Yeah.
Other is a website. We have a colleague that has a website called We Share Science, Brian Watkins. We Share Science, all together. And it's a great website because it has all this research on every imaginable, but placed in the form of short presentations online. It's not the raw paper that is hard to read in academies, but it's something in a website like a video or a short demo of whatever the paper is about, and it's really great. So, of course, we have the example of Khan Academy for explaining anything to anybody. But I was thinking, what about some kind of collection of inventions, EOP inventions, like where we can start like a reservoir of ideas. I myself have one thing in patent registration right now that I put it is an app called Neighbors that runs in in cell phones and has 4 functions. One is security, and there is a similar app called Citizens in New York. One of the problems in these inner city places is security.
Yeah.
So community policing is kind of complicated, but basically it boils down to if you have your cell phone with you and your neighbors are connected with you and it's late at night and you come back home, you can get help immediately just by people turning on the lights. So, and that lowers the number. I will send you the link so you can see, but it's also in the article I put about the other thing that is the function is a market for employment. One problem with these areas that are informal settlements or slums is that people do a lot of gigs for a living, but the neighboring areas that usually are well off, because the combination is always the slums go next to the mansions, are afraid to hire someone from the slum. And the idea is, what about if you partner with the city?
Absolutely.
To get the people. And then you create a sort of task rabbit for people in that condition. So you can try to create a market. And those who want, and those who want a job, and those who want an electrician or a bricklayer or someone who can do something. And so the idea was, we have the app makers who are very skillful, but they usually design for app users that belong to the $900 Samsungs or the iPhones. But you can do things with smaller or different. So this is an example, but inviting people to, if you have an idea that works, or you did something, or you saw something, you can post it, and we create like a reservoir where people can look at, saying, "Oh, look at that."
No, you're absolutely right. And I think that's the fundamental problem is if I reflect on my upbringing, I went to a public school. Everybody went to the public library. We went to the public swimming pool. And you know what? I went to a state university for undergrad. And so I said, we had ample opportunities to connect in real life with people who are very different. And we know that it's not the case anymore, even though my son goes to public school here, everyone is a Qualcomm PhD. And I mean, there's not very much diversity, economically or even racially, as there was when I was growing up. So I think what's happened is in real life, you end up, I don't know who you would go to meet people. Where do you go to meet people who are very different than you? That's like Uber and Tinder. And other than that, there's not a lot at work, and at leisure. And a lot of algorithms are just programmed to help you find the match. People who have your same tastes and preferences, but everything we know about innovation is that, exposure to different ideas makes you, so I'm like, well, somebody needs to help me find the mismatch. That is critical thing. And I idea is very interesting because Amazon, I'll find this article. So what they have started doing, they are finding all of these very medium-sized vendors of different things around the world. And the article was about India, but they said they're trying this other places. So they find somebody who's been running kind of a decent-sized operation for years, whatever, and they're basically just giving them information. Oh, you make linens? Well, this is the standard size for a queen bed sheet and a king bed sheet and everything else, right? And they're giving them that information so that they can produce to a global market. And we're saying, well, for us, it's a win-win because people need to be able to come to Amazon to find unique goods at a better price than they could find anywhere else. At the same time, we're giving these people a regular ready-made market. And so it's quite interesting. Some of the people who have things that are maybe not like to the quality of bed sheets, for example, they're saying, oh, give them alternate use cases so they can market the same bed sheet as a beach towel, or like, you know, they're showing them how to say this is all the ways you can use that. Help the customer visualize this. So on Amazon Prime, I said, let me take a look at this. So the same bed sheets that you see that are kind of cheap and everything else, they said, oh, these are being made into tablecloths, slightly thicker. But Amazon Prime, I ordered these for $7 each. Absolutely beautiful. They were all incredibly uniform with a nice little note in there. So they're actually going to be doing like portals for different countries. So all of these little things that we used to bring back, like, you know, the lamps for Indian New Year, the little kind of stuff, it's all on Amazon now. And shipped in 2 days. So they're doing a lot of this. My mother-in-law is an artist, and she had an old website floating around. And there's a similar thing from Google where they literally sent her proactively an email saying, this is all your work. This is what it would look like on a scarf, on a t-shirt, on a mouse pad. And if you give us permission to use your design, we will put your artwork on our portal and people can order products with this.
That's terrific.
It's just amazing. So there's so many people who need that level of help, because in Thailand, they had mixed results depending on what it was, but all they did was they had the people who go to the international fashion shows and design shows create a book and just tell all the craftspeople this is what is playing in international markets for the next year, because they choose a 1 year in advance. So they said, do whatever craft you do, but just kind of have some visual. This is what the room looks like. This is what the other accessories look like. So create in something that goes with this color scheme and everything. So they're not replicating the same designs for hundreds of years, but everything they're making is kind of export ready. And the fashionable crowd that's local, that wants to patronize local businesses, also has stuff that really goes with stuff. So that is like some of the really low-hanging fruit that is still not systematically. But, you know, these are a few of the things I know, but I agree with you. I think the critical piece is everybody always wants to close the knowledge gap at the bottom. There's a significant knowledge gap. There are a lot of, you know, the concepts are significant, but when you add dated mental assumptions that don't work on top of that, it makes it much more exhausting and tiring for anybody to really try and do anything.
Yes. I put there, I started writing down some things so we can share. You can Google that one. I don't know exactly if they have a .com or a .com.ar. These are guys who won the Kaufman Award last year.
Okay.
This is a company that does exactly that. They have a carpet designers. So they have weavers in the northwest of Argentina. The guys originally were from that area. They are designers, architects. They have a little shop in Buenos Aires. And they decided to sell the craftsmanship, but combining their ability for designing patterns, offering a platform for customers in New York to design their own carpet. And the weavers are trained to design in non-traditional formats, but also they can develop their own little shops. They have already 120 people, and most of them had started also their own small companies in Jujuy, north of Argentina, or Tucumán. And these are two guys who started basically connecting craftsmanship with technology and using a portal to help them design. Other thing that was born in Argentina is no more and no less than Tom Shoes.
Yeah.
Tom Shoes started in one slum in Buenos Aires. They put there the first, and the guy who worked with Lev Vygotsky is working in Argentina as well, and he described how they started, because they started doing issues themselves, and then they discovered that was an important way to get, this transaction between BOP producers and first world consumers, with the price premium for that social. So that's another possibility. But I was thinking in what you said, what about trying, maybe I was thinking loud voice. One alternative would be, okay, let's maybe do an article describing what you have there, and maybe some activity. I was thinking, John, about Barcelona Activa.
Mhm.
We are planning to do some activities. Barcelona has this agency, it's a governmental agency that basically is dedicated to develop economic development in Barcelona. One of the things they have, for example, is a struggle to develop sustainable economic activities for people living in the inner city that has become extremely expensive, because with Airbnb and the tourism, rents went up, and people working inside the city obviously have to look for new activities to make a living. And the classical response of the city was, okay, they show us in Barrigotic, the historical district, a shoemaker, a shoe repair shop. The guy was in his 70s. And obviously, he was training someone to replace him, but the shop was an historical, like if you have a barber shop with a pole and you have two people sitting there and getting a shave. It's like it was about that. So the idea was, and they have this. They walk us into empty spaces of the city that they want to develop to do something, and then they stop, because there's something is the part that they. Because of course they are professionally trained PhDs or people from academic background, not inventors. This is a side, but it's not the side. When I was studying my PhD in Buenos Aires, we have a waiter. The waiter was an expert in psychology. So he had been before that in a mental hospital because of his own problems. So he knew a lot about psychosis, and we were studying in a bar, in a cafe where he worked, and he was explaining us different things we didn't understand. And one day he stopped us because we were trying to find and he said, "You know what? You know how a PhD scratched his ear?"
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's the problem we have with the Barcelona people. We are complicated people. No, John? And
I'm feeling so good that I don't have a PhD.
well,
Black sheep
good
in the
of you.
family.
Believe me.
But to Deepa's point, aspirations.
Well, also it's interesting because things like wellness, and we're starting to see the benefit of that. But quick example from the U.S. So they have. I did not realize now to become a beautician in this country, you have to literally spend like 15 hours of 100 hours, of classroom outside of classroom instruction, practicals. So literally, you can become a pilot in the amount of time it takes to become a hairstylist. So they have this, okay, where they basically had a lady from LA who said, why do most people literally go in for hairstyling? They actually don't always want cut and color. A lot of people just want their hair to be blow dried so they look good for a party or whatever else. So she started this thing called Dry Bar. And all they do is they 4 hairstyles only. They do it straight, wavy, put your hair up, or some other what they call messy hairstyle. 4 hairstyles, predictable. And they hire independent people, but what they do is they have a beautiful store. You come in, it's like a salon experience, but these are independent contractors who pay a share, and they do only these 4 hairstyles. They don't get creative. That is $100 million business in 6 years.
Wow.
And the interesting thing is now they have a subscription model because so many professional women who regularly have to be on television, everything else. So they have like a 100 or 120 different, do you want it done 3 times, 4 times, whatever else. And with all the customer data that they have, guess what? Now they have products. So they have a $300 blow dryer, an entire line of styling products. But how they got around all the regulation of cut and color by realizing that this is an interesting space, right? And now you see, like, in all the women's magazines for like bridal parties and stuff, people take their whole, bridal party in there. They have a girls' night out there. So they will open in the evenings and do special events for different organizations. So I said, there's like a lot of these things, and it's automatically de-risked because even if you have all the money in the world, you only get your hair cut, every 8 weeks or so if you're a woman, and colored even less than that. Plus, if you increase the purchase occasions, and if someone's not happy, there's no cost. Stick their head right back under the sink and start over. But if you have a cut off too much or color it wrong, it's very expensive. So I think that point of just finding businesses with a de-risking is already built in. And, people can learn and get started right away is so huge. And a lot of these, like wellness and beauty and all that, we're like, okay, we're here to listen to you, make you feel good. And people who are actually poor are really good at providing service. Rich people are horrible at providing service.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's where I say, like, okay, if I look at the Indian experience, even people who don't like the country find the business. Everyone comes back, oh, I like the people, I love the architecture, I like some of the food, but I was treated so well everywhere I went. So I said, well, okay, so artistic stuff, people-oriented stuff, those are the things that stay with you longer after whatever, business interactions have gone. And people don't remember their meetings beyond a year, but they remember a visit to a museum, or they remember a lunch they had with somebody. Those are the kind of things. I said, if you work up from what people naturally tend to remember and what makes a deep impression on them, then you don't have to have 10 of those interactions before people change their mindset. 3 or 4 might do the trick.
Exactly. So these are good examples of the kind of things I was thinking we could do. Is like what I think is the most important part is people, once you see one, it's like, how do you know when you see one? Okay, and it's not because that's the one you are going to use. It is the one that helps you think, if I do the spinner with that, I can use it in a different way, or I can take this example you mentioned and do it my way. So having a place where they can learn to do these things can be very important. And it can be also, because we have portable, it can be also a way to make it much more, much faster, meaning people can get the idea and then come with the idea and say, well, okay, I'm interested in this thing. Can you help me with that? And then they can start working with something that, as you said, and I read in the article, was very important. Let the people who know the place to figure out the aspiration or the need that thing may meet or be helpful for, because we cannot even imagine what kind of thing they can do with this. But what is for sure is they don't have this kind of information. They don't have this kind of access.
But also, we tend to reward paper qualifications, and then you don't really put any emphasis on what somebody. Going to an Ivy League business school, you don't ask someone, do you know how to farm? Do you know how to weave? Do you know how to do any of these things? And so, here too, ask what is the passion, what is the ability, and figure out how to supercharge it. You can't have a productive conversation by documenting everything that someone doesn't know. I mean, that never goes anywhere. People don't need to be reminded even to put their shoes away, which I do every day, and it never ends, never ends well with. So it's never productive. The best thing is find out what people already visualize themselves doing. And the interesting thing, Seth, from the psychological point of view, is they've said that everyone's not aspiring to be exactly like us either. What we found really universally is that people in all income categories, in all societies, all feel that they would be perfectly happy with double what they have now. They don't want 10x and 50x and everything else. They're like, no, twice what I have now. What's very interesting is they actually have this group that said, what would your wildest dreams be in the United States, not anywhere else around the world. And they said for most people, the average cost of checking all the boxes and making all people's dreams come true is about $40,000. But if you look at what we spend on subsidies and Band-Aids and everything, and I look at very different types of examples. It's like if you see Make-A-Wish Foundation, where they do things for very sick, terminally ill children, they ask them what would your last wish be, and a lot of them have to really have very they can't go unsupervised because they're minors, so they usually have to provide money for the entire family, take a trip to Disneyland or do these kinds of things, and they have very complex medical needs. But by pulling together both paid and volunteer forces, most of those Make-A-Wish dreams are about $10,000. And under the most, super customized, there's just no standard formula because some kids have cancer and they can't be out with the germs, and there's absolute huge level of complexity. But people pull resources together, and that has a 99% satisfaction rate, right? So I said this is the interesting thing where if you try to go overboard making everything a business model, people motivate them. But when you put the emotional aspect in there explicitly and say, okay, part of this is also about doing the right thing and things that are meaningful to people, they find the way to do it. I mean, some of the stuff they've pulled off, international travel to see the pyramids for some, and they do have TAP Airlines and others to do some pro bono stuff. But they're able to pull this off for this amount of money is still incredible. They're like, well, if you can make somebody's wildest dreams come true, we should be able to give them some basic livelihood and dignity.
Exactly. And again, if I was thinking, I'm identifying two things. One is one activity we can propose to people in Barcelona. Help me, John, with this. Suggesting them, okay, we have here, one activity could be working with examples and models. And you are going to be the first guinea pigs. You meaning these guys who belong to this group or someone who belongs to a more practical group, but they can invite people who are in business. But setting a series of examples and saying, okay, look at all these first, and then we will discuss. You have the paper, we can use another paper or examples, and then we have a session like this where we discuss different ideas that could work in, let's say, Barcelona. And then they may say, okay, we are going to try these two things. That will be one way. The other thing I was thinking is this would be like, think of this window I have here, like apple pies. You put the things you have been cooking, and you let them choose. So a website that shows as simple as freshly baked pies, different business ideas that work in low-income populations. Say, okay, here you have, and you can bring yours. Or and if you are interested, then I will ask you for help in how can you make it work as a professional business model. Say, okay, this is the way to connect with someone who can help you to see if this makes sense. Because maybe you are good at making things, you are good at selling things, you are good with the coloring hair, not necessarily with finding a customer or making sure that you are going to end your experiment not poorer than you started. To figure out.
Yeah, and part of it is also like hooking up some of the people who are doing really good work with the kind of right influencers to bring attention. Like, you know, one of the oldest examples, Nina Horn, when she was first starting out, I mean, Marilyn Monroe liked her and wanted to support her. So all she did was for a week, she booked a table right in front when Lena Horne was starting out, and she would just look like she was having the best time because she wasn't no one would have accepted her giving a lecture about racism or anything else. So she just said, my presence alone, everybody was like, why is this woman turning down invitations and why is she going? She didn't overdo it. She said, no, I just really like, you know, her voice, it's so, that actually helped Lena Horne take off. So sometimes these very small, you know, kind of getting these people who are influencers who have a lot of credibility in a different market, you know, look at that they're not comfortable with. But there are some gems, like people have introduced me to some like, you know, random tailors and stuff who do a great job. And I'm happy to do that. I wouldn't do it for some unknown person, but our tailor in India, I'm like, I will talk about him in any international forum because he is like a genius. He gets everything done. And I think this, like, field trips need to go the other way, you know, as well. Like, if you take people in and say, look, these are the strengths, you know, what can be done. It's pretty amazing how fast people get excited and can figure some of this stuff out. But the interaction almost needs to be designed because it just doesn't naturally, our lives are set up
Yeah.
And it's scary too. I mean, I will say, like, even from a security standpoint, I don't wander into places alone, judging anyone else. As much as I care, I know that I'm like, look so visibly like I don't belong, but I do go in with friends or whatever else. But I think that if there was a place where some of these just be curated, it makes a huge difference.
Yes, yes. And I think that's another interesting angle, that offering an opportunity to people to have an interaction that implies a presentation or a reaction, so you can see a different side of the person, and make the person also feel that, well, they are looking at me, or I'm going to explain. That will be like and I'm just thinking out of the top of my head. My second reaction will be, okay, you look at all these different things, then you come and you basically pitch your idea. What do you think would be the thing you would like to do, but you don't know exactly if that is going to work? So either Barcelona or Barrio 31, I could find out if they want to basically host some kind of experimental activity, because there is always a first time, and we have to try it before we do something more formal. But say, okay, maybe we'll try with you. You bring some other alternatives. And another thing that is coming to my mind now is we have another awardee this year for the Roger Kaufman Award, who's Clayton Christensen and Efosa Homo.
Yeah, I know both of them.
Yeah, well, you know him? Oh, great. I just met him because of the award. And I'm just basically planning to bring him to Washington in October, which, by the way, I would like to see if we can combine. It's October 8th. We are going to have an ISPI Roger Kaufman Award, and it's going to be him. It's going to be people
Never again.
Barcelona are coming. They confirm me, by the way, John. They are coming from Barcelona Activa.
Oh, really?
They
Okay.
won the award the year before, but one thing I thought this year with the awards was inviting the awardees from previous years, because obviously they are part of the jury for the award, but also they like to keep looking at what's going on. So that would be an opportunity, and we can maybe organize an activity in Washington after the awards to discuss, for example, these ideas. But I was thinking maybe having a conversation with Ohomo about, because what you propose is, I see a lot of combination with what he's working at. He's working in the market making innovation. So the idea of creating a market for something. And you are basically working on how do you build products or services with a BOP thinking embedded, or if you want, making people think in terms of some of these connecting design, multiple approaches, building an ecosystem. So I find that maybe that will be interested, if you're interested, to have a conversation like this with him, so we can explore adding more dimensions.
I think the issue with their book, which I agree with a lot of it, is I think they have kind of put a theory on things that had already been done, and they've kind of now gone back and pretended that their theory explains. I'm totally respectful of both of them, very smart, very nice. But I said this was kind of ongoing projects that had taken place. I mean, I'm going to come back 20 years later and say, oh, well, let me layer my theory on something that had already been done. It's not clear that the theory explains it, but I think both of them are I'm going to be meeting with Karen session with Efosa several times in the Drucker Forum and stuff. So very thoughtful, interesting people for sure. And I think there might be some value to actually teaching people, like the design methodology that I use. I haven't actually explicitly taught that in a long time, but I just did recently. And people were saying, look, the value of kind of having customers, the market, the existing products and opportunities on one piece of paper and in a visual representation on its own is solving a lot of problems for us, because there's implicit knowledge that doesn't get captured in written reports. And also, as things change, which they do, because implementing a lot of times is 2 to 3 year process and then all the changes and all the discoveries along the way somehow just get lost in paper. Whereas visual thing, you can just add and move things around a little bit, and literally everyone can call out, well, I don't agree with this. When you have it all in financials and things, you're limiting the number of people who can give feedback right at the get-go. And the people who you're trying to help are the least able to give their feedback. And so I said, sometimes what's critical, I think, is just giving transparency to the assumption. It's such a powerful thing, because rather than trying to design, then it becomes a very difficult thing, financially and in terms of ego and reputation, for people to say, okay, we missed some huge insight. And they try to fix it. So it's like those people taking selfies off the back of a cliff, and then they're like, okay, wait, We're almost done there, and then oops, we fell. So I realized that, the design thinking actual method allows us to capture everything visually. And when people have like the face in mind and, oh, this is the user story, it's all in one place. Here's what everyone is doing. It's the same map. And being able to overlay this, I actually was very surprised that people are like, no, you know what? We have information overload now. There's a lot of money flowing around. There's a lot of good intentions, but there's so much information. And I think as people escape extreme poverty, there's a lot of diversity in attitudes and preferences. So you can't respond to anything with a one-size-fits-all approach. So, even the phones people choose, the fashion, everyone wants to express themselves at much lower. And we're not used to designing that way. So I'm going back. Now people are saying, we don't want your insights, we want your methods. So, so I said, okay, that's interesting. But new learning for me that now everyone's like, we have made the trips. We're excited. We're ready to move forward. If we produce something, the check is available. So I think it's now, very different world for me, like saying, okay, maybe method has more value because you can help people put the context on what they've done and what they've learned in a visual manner, because then they can share it even with the people you're trying to help. Like, okay, does this make sense to you? And especially now, the good ideas are traveling from country to country. It's so nice to be able to say, oh, actually, we just need to change the color, or we need to do some very minor tweaks, and this market could be far bigger than we realize, but we don't have to go back to the drawing board. And so, I'm happy to also maybe spend a little, like next time I'll show you a little bit about how the method works, but that's something interesting. I can send you a quick PowerPoint with a few slides. That's what I'm finding is that for very complex, longer-term projects, the one-page thing just is magical, just because people can understand it. They don't have to go back through 500 pages to find out, and people change, we have people taken off projects, put back on, and all of these issues become very problematic. Some people have a huge level of passion, some don't. It's just nice to be able to get everything in one place so that they can say, okay, the 10 commandments don't change, but we can go back and
the Bell Brooks version is that there were more.
Yeah.
Which I suspect, looking at the results, that something was lost in the middle of.
Well, that's the thing. Is like if the rules are difficult to understand, then they're never going to be implemented. So you have to make something easy for people and have a lot of the debate on how do we do it. But if you show everyone this is where the opportunity is and why, then you might get 10 products that work really well. But sometimes when you try to do things in a very haphazard fashion, you can spend huge amounts of money and not get anything that anybody likes. And that happens a lot. I mean, even in the developed world, the stats on innovation are terrible. So
4%.
Anyone who's afraid of going to the BOP, I said, what'll make you feel better? Look at your performance here. So I was like, if nothing else, it'll probably be cheaper and less embarrassing. So that's a good reason to.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm thinking. Let me. In terms of the practical steps we can follow. First of all, I will use the razor, the Ocam razor. So let's limit the number of contributors. It's going to be you and John and me. We in this stage. Then we can choose if we want someone else, because that way we work on the preliminary step. Then I was thinking, what if we get another meeting? But then you prepare something. You were describing, So you tell us what do you think about this idea? What would you do for example, for the Barcelona people and the Barrio 31 people in terms of trying to, to explore this idea, okay, these are examples of innovation, maybe, or ways we can go around, like, just for us to have an idea of, okay, we can organize some kind of session with on the other side, introducing you and introducing also, okay, we can try this, and first have to take a look at it, experience yourself, and then we can develop a project in either one of the two settings. The only limitation they have in the two settings, of course, is the entrepreneurs speak Spanish only. But the guys who are going to talk with, they are fluent in English, so it's no problem. So we will have first the manager of social innovation, quote unquote, as we like to call them.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic.
Then we could do it maybe, I don't know, next week, or I'm traveling to Europe at the end of the month, and I will be a month away.
At the end of the month, so before that would probably work better.
Sorry?
I'm traveling to India end probably the 1st of August or so, but so anytime before that would be.
How about next week, for example?
Yeah, next week should be.
Yeah. So we have okay. Let me look at the calendar so we can arrange. A week from now, for example, the 17th,
Yeah,
how does it look for you?
That should be fine.
About this time, 3 p.m.?
Yeah, this time.
Great.
Yep.
John, okay?
Yep.
Okay, I'm writing this. And then the idea would be, I'm right now creating. I'm using the Central Standard Time, so it's just so you know. Back to the meeting. I just sent the invitation. Okay, for the 17th.
I'll put together just like 5 slides, and I'll just show you how the methodology works.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, and I'll show you a little bit about the roofing project we did. It was like one of those things was literally from, at one point the challenge was to even figure out how to crush cardboard. And now it's like a full-fledged factory. So it's been a pretty exciting journey. But I can show you that in brief of, how that all came together. And now I think it's actually poised to do some exciting things. Like even Habitat for Humanity, that's never invested in a material, has made an investment.
Wow. Yeah.
It's been a very cool, completely new material. So that's why I think, sometimes the issue is really that we don't have enough rungs in the ladder. That's what I'm seeing now, that people are ready to move forward, and we just need to add those intermediate steps and training wheels and everything, and people are ready to go forward.
And I think that's a perfect example, because housing is, in terms of Barrio and Barcelona, both have a huge component of place and housing. So that will be an interesting topic that everybody can relate to. But any other thing is valid. Okay, so 17, I will send you the things I think may be of interest, so you can look at that. Same with you and the rest of your group in Barcelona.
Awesome. Yeah. So thank you so much. I will look forward to touching base with both of you next week then, and I'll send something along before that, a couple days before, so that you have a chance to.
Perfect. Great to see you.
All righty. Thank you. Take
To
care.
be continued. Bye-bye.